YouTube, Facebook, and Tumblr fans, it is now time to kick off my summer of discographies with none other than the band Killswitch Engage. Their first studio album was released in 2000 and it is self-titled. They actually have two self-titled studio albums, and let's say they're both their weakest. So yeah, I said that in the Versus video. Actually, my first pilot episode of Versus was Howard Jones versus Jesse Leach, and I had basically said, well, you know, their self-titled albums are ironically their weakest, but this album blows the other '09 self-titled album way out of the water. This album is very raw, it's very intense, but the problem with that is it does sound a little bit on the raw side, but at the same time, the production just makes it sound a little bit underdeveloped, per se. There's a lot of good stuff on here, don't get me wrong, especially if they would re-record it. Oh my god, it would be kick-ass, but the way things stand on here right now, the production isn't exactly up to par with, say, Alive or Just Breathing, which would come out 2 years later. So, coincidentally though, a lot of the songs on this album were remade for that album. So, while there are a lot of good songs on here, a lot of them, or at least the ones that are remade, are overshadowed by their Alive or Just Breathing counterparts. So, songs like Temple from Within, Vita Infra, and In the Unblind, if you have the deluxe edition of Alive or Just Breathing. So, those are probably my top picks for this album even, alone. So, Vita Infra, really good song structure. Temple from Within, awesome. But I'm not even going to talk about that. I'm not going to touch on the songs that were on Alive or Just Breathing, because you guys already know my opinion on that album. I'm going to redo it, but you guys still know my opinion. So, most of the songs, or all the songs, if not all the songs, are good, are very good, very well crafted, and just, especially in terms of just pure energy. And that's something that Killswitch Engage has been very good at, as well as the lyrical content. The lyrics for Killswitch Engage just come naturally. They're awesome, they're amazing, very well crafted, very well written, and some of the best lyrics I've seen in metal history. So, that being said, Irreversal. This is the first song that comes on that was not remade in any way, shape, or form, and it's awesome. It's very heavy, very hard-hitting, and, you know, as heavy as this album gets, per se, though, because it is bogged down by the production. Adam D is an amazing producer, don't get me wrong, but he didn't really have a lot of money to work with on this album, you know, being their debut, being their first studio album, getting themselves out there, getting a name for themselves. But, again, another thing that's really interesting, this is their first album, again, with Jesse Leach, who would return for Live or Just Breathing, and then just leave because of issues having to deal with depression and whatnot. But then, of course, he would come back after forming Times of Grace, and then release Disarm the Descent, and just amaze the world all over again, practically, because that album was fucking kick-ass. So, that aside, Irreversal, awesome melodies, awesome song, it's very intricate in its own right, and then we get into Rusted Embrace, which, isn't really my favorite song. It goes a little bit, it's a little bit, slower. I mean, it builds up and picks up the pace, but I don't know, it just seems a little bit disjointed to me, and the singing seems a bit off-key. But other than that, I mean, this album does sound like a rough demo. If they would have stuck with maybe like a more like EP-ish kind of sound, maybe include a few songs on here and call it maybe like a demo or something, and then just, you know, polished them up for the final release, I think that would have probably worked a little bit better. But like I said, this album is still awesome. This album is still a very sound debut, but Alive or Just Breathing would have been like an even more so sound debut if they would have chose to go that direction. So, next, Prelude and Soilburn. Oh my god. This is one of their best songs ever, yet. And ironically, Soilburn was the first song they ever wrote, ever. So, they performed it live all the time, practically. And yet, a lot of people I talk to that like Killswitch Engage don't know about it, because they honestly thought that Alive or Just Breathing was their debut. I'm not even kidding. So, you know, that says something. But anyways, this album, awesome, very raw, although it is one of their weakest, in my eyes. Especially when compared to, you know, such classics as Daylight Dies, Heartache, and Alive or Just Breathing, of course. And of course, you know, Disarm the Descent way up here where you can't see my hand, where the camera can't pick it up because it's that awesome. But, yeah, Numb, Sickened Eyes. This one took me a little while to get used to as well. and One Last Sunset, it's just one of those, outros, so to speak. There's no real like words to it, but there's a lot of intricate guitar melodies that flow very well together. So, and then if you get the re-release, the deluxe version, there are demos of 4 songs that were already on the album, which are One Last Sunset, Prelude, Vita Infra, and In the Unblind. So, In the Unblind was right before the actual real version, was right before One Last Sunset. So, it was In the Unblind and then One Last Sunset. The reason why I didn't talk about it, though, is because it is a very good song, but I already alluded to it on my Alive or Just Breathing. So, I want to talk about something new for you guys. These are, of course, different versions of the song, but I do like the Alive or Just Breathing versions a lot better than this. So, overall, I would probably rate it 7.5 out of 10. I really like it, but at the same time, the production just bogs it down. I mean, it was a sound. It would be a sound demo album. It would be a sound, like EP per se. But as a full release, I've got to say they should have like they should have waited, or at least gotten a little bit more of the funds to maybe fine tune their sound a little bit more. So, it's a sound release. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It's got songs like Soil Burn just boost up my rating just that much. But as far as it stands right now, I'm gonna give it a 7.5 out of 10, just because of the production, and it just seems very just underdeveloped a little bit. But that being said, it is an awesome album, and if you are a fan of Killswitch Engage, I would definitely not pass this one over, as it is so much better than their 2009 self-titled. So, that being said, thank you very much for watching. This is Midnight Strike 3625. Keep calm and rock on.